All right. Hi, friends. I'm Sarah,
Hi guys, I'm Erica.
and we are the faces of the nonprofit organization Rooted Willow Community. You might know us as the co-facilitators of the Lower Susquehanna After Baby Club, which is our signature outreach program.
So we're coming to you today to talk about all things related to the current formula shortage. We've been a part of many discussions over the past few weeks, and we've gotten a ton of questions from you guys with parents who either affected by the shortage or other people who really just want to help and support those who are affected. So we've recognized that there's really just a lack of information out there or some kind of weird, crazy Facebook stuff floating around. And really want to give you guys the best information from somebody who knows it.
Yeah. So, like Erica said, we've collected questions that we've observed others asking. We've generated a list from our members of our own After Baby Club. So hopefully we can connect you with the information that you need to make the best decisions for your baby and for your family.
So to help us do that, we've brought in our professional colleague and friend, Christina Berlett. She's an IBCLC, which is an international board certified lactation consultant. She works as a lactation consultant at University of Maryland Hospital in downtown Baltimore City and through her private practice, Mama Moon Lactation. So Christina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Sarah. I'm so happy to be partnering with you guys to really get all this information out there. It's such an important topic. I'm seeing this in the hospital. I'm seeing this in my private practice. Parents are really worried about this and are having trouble figuring out who to turn to get this information.
Yeah.
So while I am an IBCLC with a lot of experience, I don't know specifically everyone that I'm talking to, your specific health concerns or issues. So I'm kind of giving broad information. And if you need more help, definitely find an IBCLC that can help you further.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I think that's a really good point, is to connect with people individually who can help you, because we're here and we can provide some information and we can provide some resources. But building your own circle of support is really the best thing that you can do to help yourself and your family. Because I know that most people their big question is, if I can't find my formula, what do I do? And like, that's a big question that we're probably not going to be able to answer for you specifically today. But I will say that one of the best things that you can do is to reach out for help, reach out to your village, to your friends, reach out to us. We can't fix the shortage and we can't tell you how to fix it for yourself, but we are here to help. So you're not going through it alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we've also been following the discussions in other local mom groups, and we have been overwhelmed in a good way with offers to help families locate the formula they need, donate breast milk, or even relactate in order to donate their own breast milk. And we'll find out what relactation is later, because I had never heard of it and I have 2 kids. So I'm very excited about that one.
Yeah. And we also wanted to emphasize that this situation is really scary. It's a really big thing, and it's a really heavy thing for a lot of people. And it's totally valid to have big emotions about that. So if you need mental health support, or even if you don't think you need mental health support, but you could benefit from some, that can be a really valuable tool for yourself and for other adults who help to care for your baby. So if that's something you think you might benefit from and you don't know how to get connected to it, or you don't even really know where to start, reach out to us. Erica is our resident mental health guru, and she can help get you connected with the resources in our community that can help you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So now, without further ado, let's get down to business. Christina, do you want to kind of give us just like a little bit of an introduction about you, so our listeners kind of know who you are and why we care so much about what you want to tell us?
Sure. So I'm Christina Berlett. I'm a nurse. I've been a pediatric nurse for 17 years. And I started my nursing career in the PICU way long ago. Did that for a while, then went to the peds floor, did some clinical instructor for different universities. I've done a lot of things. I've worn a lot of hats. What led me to become an IBCLC was through my own trials and tribulations with my kiddos. And it was not rainbows and sunshine over here.
Feel
So,
that.
right, for sure had my own struggles and had so much more support with my second baby with amazing lactation consultants. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I could do this for other moms, I mean, how cool would that be? So I looked into it and I started that journey 8 years ago to become an IBCLC. And I love it. I love, love, love supporting parents through this journey because it is hard. It is really hard to be a new mom, to be a new parent, to have all those hormones going on, and then to be struggling with that thing you think is just going to come so naturally, feeding your baby. So I love holding parents' hands through all of this.
Oh, well, they're lucky to have you.
And I love that you're part of our local community too. And you're a mom and your kids, are around. You're basically our neighbor, and our kids are friends with your kids in a larger sense. So like just having you as part of our community, I think gives it an extra special piece. You're not just some professional in the hospital, like you're one of us.
Yes, yes. It is very cool to hear when people find me. Oh, I heard from my neighbor. Oh, I heard from my friend. Oh, I heard from my coworker. And it's just really amazing to be part of everyone's journeys.
That's awesome. And then how about your what you do on your side, your private practice?
Yeah, so my private practice, I just started last summer because I just was getting so many calls and emails and Facebook messages, my friends struggling, my neighbors struggling, can you help? Can you help? And I thought, I really need to look into maybe doing this and seeing if I could help reach more people that way. So yep, Mama Moon Lactation was born from what my youngest used to call nursing time. She called it Mama Moon. I don't know where that came from, but that just seemed appropriate to name my business. This all started with her. So yes, I've been doing this since last July, doing home visits, and it's great. It's really amazing.
That's awesome. And what areas do you serve?
So I serve Hartford and Baltimore County. Sometimes I do go into the city, just kind of depending on how far away they are from me. And I'm in the Hereford zone. So I'm right between Baltimore and Hartford County. I'm in Baltimore County.
Awesome. And is this something that you could also do virtually too, or is this more of like
I do have virtual support, and for the most part, people do want in-home visits, but obviously I can do virtual support anywhere in the country. So yep, you can go right to my website if you wanted to book, mamamoonlactation.com.
Cool. And we will also put in a direct link to your website and to your Instagram when we upload this.
Yeah.
Our blog. Cool. Well, if you guys are set, I have a ton of questions that I feel like are pressing and need to be answered. So
let's do it.
Awesome. So this one, I feel like everybody has been asking. This is the big one. So the formula I was using to feed my baby has now been recalled. What are my options?
Yes.
What do I do?
That we are hearing that a lot. And so something that a lot of people don't realize is that the store brand formula is exactly the same as the name brand formula. It's the same ingredients. There's a big price difference usually, and that's the big brands spending that money on advertising, whereas Giant, Sam's Club, Target, they're not advertising their formula. So the Sam's Club brand of formula, the Target brand of formula, the Walmart brand of formula, any of those stores have what's comparable. So for instance, if your baby is taking Infamil Gentilese, you would find the Sam's Club brand that says comparable to Infamil Gentilese. Or if your baby was taking Similac Sensitive, again, you would find that similar. And they even make the containers the same color to kind of point you in that direction of, oh, here's this yellow container. And also know that the sensitive formulas, that sometimes they're called the gentle formula or the spit up formula or the comfort for those babies with sensitive tummies, those are kind of interchangeable. So if you were usually buying the Similac sensitive brand, but then switch to the Infamil Gentle Ease, it's virtually the same. It's the way the proteins are broken down, and they're a little bit more broken down than in a regular formula, so the baby can process them easier. So that would be another kind of substitute that you could switch.
Nice. So I mean, essentially, like, are they really that different? You know, I mean, I feel like it would kind of, I mean, I feel like maybe there's like some, you know, brand kind of thing that I feel like, oh, like I should be going out and buying like the most expensive stuff. Like, is it okay that it's less expensive?
Right. That's really confusing to people, because you do get really stuck on that. Well, we use Similac, we use Infamil, we use
Mhm.
Nestle. You really get stuck on that brand. But if you turn over those and look at the ingredients, it's the same. And I had a nutritionist in the PICU tell me this years ago. And I was just kind of floored by that information. And I've actually been recommending this to families for a long time. You don't have to buy the brand name. It can just be kind of the standard formula. And the Lactation Hub, HUB Lactation Hub on Instagram, has a fantastic post from a couple days ago where she puts together all of the different store brands, all of the different name brands, and she kind of color codes them with photos of what it looks like to kind of show you this is the same as this, is the same as this.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll
Nice.
definitely go find that after we're done.
Yeah,
here.
it's just a great visual.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just remember, like, you know, back in the day, like a couple years ago, looking it up and being like, this literally all looks the same. Like, why is something, you know,
There's
why are they so
so many
different?
options, so many options.
I mean, are there any like safe alternatives to commercially available formula?
Yeah,
Or
because
like,
like if you can't find any formula at all,
yeah,
then
Right.
like then what's your next step?
Right. So I know that's kind of going around making your own or using goat milk. And so the American Academy of Pediatrics has really cautioned against making your own recipe or using goat's milk, simply because babies require such a specific electrolyte combination for their tiny little bodies, and they can have some really big medical problems if they're not getting those correct electrolyte balances in their body. So goat's milk is not recommended, nor is making your own formula, unfortunately.
okay. So no corn syrup formula from my
No,
grandmother via
I
Facebook.
know the grandmas want to be really helpful with that. I know they do.
Yeah, can you speak at all to the people who are saying, well, our whole generation was raised on this formula and we're all fine? Like, what would be your response there?
Yeah, well, so I feel like feeding children is such a hot topic, right? We get really fired up about this, that, well, I did this and I'm fine, or well, my grandma said, and well, I did. And it's really easy to get fired up about this topic. So I compare it to helmets, to bike helmets. When I was a child in the 80s, I did not wear a helmet on my bike. I rode all around the neighborhood, crashed how many times, I don't even know, not wearing a helmet. And it's not because my parents were bad people or didn't care about me. It's because in the 80s, we didn't really have all of the research that we do now to say it's really important to ride a helmet. I mean, none of my friends wore helmets, none of us wore helmets. But now, my children, I mean, you better believe they always have their helmet on. We have all of the research and information to say this is the best thing for our children now. And it's not that there's anything bad about what people did 30 or 40 or 90 years ago, but it's just that we know better now that this is a better thing to do.
Yeah. Kind of like car seats too. I mean, because when I was a
Mhm.
kid, I remember
Absolutely.
being 4 years old and I didn't ride in a car seat and rode in the front seat.
Absolutely.
And like that was perfectly acceptable then. That was
Yeah.
just what people did. That was normal. But now, if we think about putting my own 4-year-old in the front seat of my car with no car seat, like, geez, like we would never do that. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Mine would be like car surfing, like
Yeah.
driving around. God.
Right. How did they even keep kids like to stay still in their seat if they weren't strapped in?
No, I don't know. I mean, I was certainly in the back seat of a station wagon, like
Mhm.
looking out, and
Mhm.
at an elementary school age without a seatbelt
Yeah.
on.
Oh, well, times have changed, huh?
They
Yeah,
have.
I think people say like when you know better, you do better. So
Yes,
so much
exactly,
more research,
exactly,
so much more knowledge now. So we know better.
exactly,
What do you do?
exactly.
Yeah. Well, and how about I was just thinking about this too because I was at Target the other day and like the entire baby formula section was just completely
Mhm,
gone, but they had toddler formula.
mhm.
And
Yes.
I didn't even know that was a thing. So like is that
Mhm.
safe for babies or like
So some pediatricians are saying that if you have a healthy baby, like 10-ish months old or older, that that could be an okay substitute for a short amount of time. So again, the toddler formula has a different electrolyte composition, so you wouldn't want that for a brand new baby. But check with your pediatrician. It may be okay to do for a short amount of time for an older baby.
okay, cool. So not like, a couple of weeks old,
Not
giving
a
them
couple weeks
toddler
old.
formula to bulk them up.
Exactly.
Noted.
But I guess if we're thinking more like if you don't have a brand new, just home from the hospital baby, your baby's maybe getting a little bit older and you start thinking about solid food. When can like solid food kind of take the place of formula? And like, different pediatricians have different ideas on when's the right time to start solid food. And so like in
Mhm.
light of the formula crisis, maybe would it be appropriate
Yeah,
to start earlier? As we're
Sure.
thinking about like what are the alternatives to formula, we've got food and we've got cow's milk. So like when does that become an okay
Sure.
thing to do?
Sure. So as far as cow's milk, the American Academy of Pediatrics just put out new guidelines in light of all of this going on. And I'm going to quote them. Cow's milk may be an option if your child is older than 6 months and is usually on a regular formula. So not a specialty formula, not a, any kind of sensitive or soy formula, regular formula. In a pinch, you could feed them whole cow's milk for a brief period of time. This is not ideal and should not become routine. However, it is better than diluting formula or homemade formula. And again, chat with your pediatrician about doing this. So the way that reads is that like a couple of days for a baby older than 6 months would be okay while you're trying to find something, but not like a long-term plan.
mhm.
Sure.
And
Go
yeah,
ahead.
and that would be truly like just cow's milk just for those few days with like no food, like,
Well,
like
so if they're
adult
older
food.
than, yeah, so if they're older than 6 months, certainly starting to feed them complementary foods is a really good idea. And I wonder if more people are going to become interested in baby-led weaning through this. And so I'm not sure how familiar you guys are. Baby-led weaning is babies kind of picking up whole pieces of food,
Mhm.
little pieces of food, working on that pincer grasp and kind of feeding themselves as opposed to purees. And the cool thing about baby led weaning is you don't have to make separate meals. So if you're
Mhm.
making kind of a stew, you can take those little bits of carrots and bits of beef, and the baby can pick them up and eat them. And so by doing this, they're kind of getting really nutrient dense food, pieces of actual food. So if you're giving them food over the age of 6 months, I would say focus on not giving them puffs and
Okay.
Cheerios, and instead focus on, avocado and things that are, have good fats and, um, you know, things with iron,
Mhm.
and just vegetables, fruits, anything that they would eat truly, and
Mhm.
anything that you're eating that you could feed your baby.
Yeah, that was actually like my favorite part of the babies growing up. I don't know why. It's like I just think it's so cute. Number one, just of watching like babies eat like adult grown food. I
And it's
think
like
it's like
all over their
adorable.
face.
And it's all over their face, but like I mean they just yeah, and just kind of I think it's cool because like for me that was really when I started seeing like their personality kind of
Mhm.
come out of just being like, my daughter was really into like all of this food that like my son wasn't into. So it was just kind of interesting for me to see like their development that way. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I like had a lot of fun with that, I think, in retrospect. So maybe hopefully this will kind of, be like more of like a positive thing we can kind of transition people to. Like, now it's just earlier
Yeah.
baby-led weaning, or whatever it's called.
And actually, the studies have shown that babies, like the messier they get with their food, which baby-led weaning tends to lead to messes, the better eaters they are, kind of in
Oh,
general, because they
fun.
get to play with the textures and experiments a little bit more. So go for it. All the
Cool.
baby-led weaning.
Okay. That's exciting. All right. So I have another question. It's a smidge off topic, that what we were talking about, but I do think it's also super important.
Mhm.
All right. So one of the moms writes, I have a 6-month-old and did not have success with breastfeeding or pumping. So I stopped after 2 weeks. But now I'm really stressed about the formula situation and I'm considering relactating. What is that? And can I do it?
Yeah, yeah. So I hope this mom is listening. You were not unsuccessful. You did the best that you could with the situation that you were dealt. And I always love to refer to Kimberly Seals Allers in these kind of moments. And she always says, women don't breastfeed, societies breastfeed. And in so many ways, our society is failing parents in so
Hmm.
many ways. So if you don't have the support set up to meet your goals, you're not meeting your goals because of the issues kind of surrounding things. So hugs to you. You did a great job.
No.
But relactation, what is relactation? So relactation simply means at some point you have lactated, you've made milk, you've had a placenta leave your uterus, and lactogenesis 2 has started. And so maybe it means that you lactated 10 years ago, or maybe you lactated a couple months ago. There's, various kind of things. But a lot of times lactation consultants can help you with relactating. So it's very possible that you could do that if you wanted to.
That's exciting.
Mhm.
So, I mean, like, how long would it take to reestablish like a milk supply?
Yeah, that's the tricky question. So every parent is going to be different depending on, did you have a decent milk supply for 2 weeks and then you stopped, and she says she has a 6 month. She only stopped 5 months ago, so it's
Mhm.
pretty reasonable that she could relactate. Um, are there medical problems on the parents' end that are contributing to a milk supply issue? Or was it a perceived milk supply issue? Maybe there was a issue on baby's end with baby not transferring well, and mom or parent was making a good amount of milk, but baby wasn't transferring well, and that's why breastfeeding stopped. So there's a lot of different factors that kind of go into, are you going to be able to make a good amount of milk relactating? Did you have a lot of blood loss during your labor and delivery? That can impact milk supply. There's kind of all different kinds of things that could go into this. So if you are really considering relactating, reach out to an IBCLC. Those visits should get covered by your insurance, and they will be able to take into account your medical history, what happened during delivery, your baby's medical history, and kind of come up with a plan to help you work on relactating.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point. It's not an easy answer, unfortunately. So we can't be like, oh, you do this X, Y, and Z, and you'll get
Yes.
milk back in X amount of days. Like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's not that. But I think it is kind of exciting that if you were in a situation where you with all of the things that are going on with a postpartum mom with a new baby, and breastfeeding didn't work for you then, it might work for you now. We don't know until somebody with some clinical knowledge can sit down and talk to you about all the specifics of your situation. But it's a possibility. So in some cases where a mom thought, or a parent thought, like, maybe this is not going to work out for us, maybe it actually can in the long run, and maybe it can. But it's something worth exploring, I think,
Sure.
even if maybe it's something that you never really considered before. But this is kind of like leading me to a next question, which would be, are there people who are better candidates than other people? So you did mention like 6 months ago, if you only stopped 5 months ago, that might not be so bad. What about somebody, I've seen a lot of moms saying that they're interested in relactating so they can donate milk to other moms in need. So what if your child's like 3 years old, so it's been a while, you've weaned maybe 2 years ago. Are you a good candidate to relactate? Would that be like something worth even trying to pursue, or?
Sure. So if you had a robust milk supply, if your 3-year-old was maybe your 4th child and you had nursed them all and you had a robust milk supply with all of the babies, you could probably start pumping and start making some milk. If you nursed 3 years ago, but it wasn't for that long, it might take a while. I think in this instance, if someone wants to help other parents, a better idea would be, I'm at Target. What friends do I know that are looking for formula, and can I be on the lookout for that? As opposed to, I'm going to pump 8 times a day, suddenly introduce this into my life with a 3-year-old. So a little bit of, decision making on the person's part who's wanting to help. It's very helpful if you're out at the store and you can pick up something for a mom that's looking for formula.
Cool.
Yeah, that's something that Erica and I were talking about before the call. Like, what is the time commitment here to reestablishing a supply? So
Yeah.
or whatever your situation is, if you're the mom of the 6-month-old baby, or you're the mom of the 3-year-old who wants to help, what should you expect to be putting into this process? You just mentioned like pumping 8 times a day. Like, what is the commitment? So that people can kind of step back and say, like, is this something that I can put on my already full plate? Protecting my mental health in addition to trying to help with this problem. Any information that would help people make that decision.
So if you have a baby you want that baby breastfeeding, lots of skin to skin is going to be one of the biggest things that's gonna help this. So skin to skin, we talk about it that first hour after your baby's born, do skin to skin, and it's going to help with bonding. And I think a lot of times we think we're up, check, I checked that off, I did that skin to skin, but skin to skin is so beneficial. I mean, truly for years to come. So if you're doing a lot of skin to skin with your baby, you're getting your hormones flowing. You're getting that oxytocin flowing, the love hormone. That's what helps with milk making. So if you're doing that and baby has a robust suck and you can get baby working on latching again, maybe you're using a nipple shield to get them latching because they had trouble latching, but latch okay to the bottle. So maybe you're using a nipple shield. Frequently stimulating. So at least 8 stimulations in a 24-hour period is going to be what your body needs. And so maybe initially when you're letting baby latch, you have kind of a little tube hooked up, like a supplemental nursing system tube, where you're giving them some formula or donated milk through that tube at your breast. So they're suckling, but they're also getting fed at the same time. And that can kind of lead to your milk supply returning, and or pumping. So if your baby wasn't able to latch, you're trying to get them to latch to relactate and they're still not latching, you would need to be using a pump about 8 times a day to get that supply back up.
Whew.
Yes.
I'm already overwhelmed just thinking about that.
It's a lot. And so if you don't have that social support, so many parents are back to work a couple weeks after their baby's born. So how are you going to work full time, childcare, pickup, daycare, maybe you have a preschooler. It's a lot to consider for many, many families. So if you have the social support, if you have friends and family that are helping you with this, certainly it would be kind of a feasible thing for some people. But for a lot of people, they're going to say, oh, I don't know if I can really do this time-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're saying a minimum of 8 times a day. And then does that include like overnight also? You wouldn't just want to put those 8 during the daytime, right?
That's a great question, Sarah. Sadly, I have this conversation with families all the time. I wish our bodies worked like that. I wish we could just schedule it during the day and not at night. Our milk making hormones are at their highest in the middle of the night, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. So there would need to be at least one, probably two pumping or feeding sessions in those early morning hours to really help with the milk supply.
Wow. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's definitely just like a lot to,
sure.
and I think that, I mean, I would assume that like everybody is either wanting to do this to either like feed their baby or like be helpful to other moms or parents who like can't, you know, they're struggling with this.
Mhm,
So, I mean, it's
mhm.
definitely coming from like a really positive place. But I think, as long as we're considering like truly what we can handle,
Yes.
you know, emotionally, logistically,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely something to consider.
Mhm,
Yeah, it sounds like a really huge commitment.
mhm.
And so, I mean, that can be disappointing, I think, in some cases if you come to the realization of, well, I really just don't think that I can do that and maintain feeling happy in my life, that it would cause a lot of stress. Um,
Absolutely.
but I also think that it's better to have that information to make a decision up front rather than to get frustrated when you're trying and it's not working. And
Sure,
now you're even more frustrated and disappointed.
sure.
So at least, having all that good information there, you can have all the cards on the table and then figure out what's the best move for you.
Definitely.
Hmm.
And so that would be if you wanted to try to establish a full milk supply. And breast or chest feeding does not have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be my baby only gets breast milk or they get all formula. So if you thought, you know what, maybe I could do half of the amount of pumping sessions or half of the amount of feeding at the breast sessions, and your baby was getting some breast milk, I mean, that is less ounces of formula you would need to worry
Hmm.
about. Um, and then some, breast milk for them. So if that is something you wanted to consider, certainly it does not have to be all or nothing.
I think that's a really excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up because that's a conversation that I have with parents a lot too,
Mhm.
who are frustrated that they're maybe not reaching their breastfeeding goals, but that, you don't have to stop. You don't have to do nothing just because you can't do everything that you want to do. It's
Yeah.
also good advice for parenting in general.
Parenting in general.
Right. It doesn't have to be black or white. Do what you can, and then you fill in the
Yeah.
rest with something else, and that's totally cool.
Yes.
Yeah, because I was even under the impression that, like when my babies were little, that like baby stomachs can't actually handle different things at the same time. So I'm not really sure where I got that information from, but I kind of had it in my head that like I had to pick formula only or breast milk only and like stick with it.
Hmm.
So is
Yeah.
that not a
Yeah.
thing?
So that is a good point. So some babies have more sensitive stomachs than other babies. And so you may have a baby that goes back and forth between a regular formula and, milk from the parent fine and have no issues. Now you may have a baby that gets really constipated when you're introducing formula and really has trouble pooping.
Hmm.
That happens a lot too. So certainly if you notice that, um, it may benefit you to keep going with that. Okay, half of their feedings are breast milk a day. We don't want them to go to all formula because of how constipated they get with the formula. That's something to consider. But we have to make sure that the baby's eating. So if mom
Hmm.
does not have a full milk supply and donor milk isn't an option, then formula is the other option.
Cool. No, that's definitely good to know. Yeah, because that sounded like my son. A lot
Mhm.
of constipation issues once we switched him on formula and dairy free, potentially soy. I even considered camel milk at one point.
It's hard when they're crying and their little
Yeah.
bellies are distended and you're bicycling, you're doing all the things.
Hmm. All of the things. Oh my God. Yeah. But no, I think we're figuring it out now. Now these three, we're slowly getting more answers that, kind of make sense in retrospect. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough.
Mhm.
I
Ugh.
think that's so valid though, that a lot of parenting, feeding in particular, it's trial and error. Like you don't always know what's going to work for your baby until you try it. And that
Hmm.
that doesn't make you a bad parent, and it doesn't mean you're like not doing the right things. It just means that you're trying to learn your individual child and what works for them.
Yes.
And sometimes the way to figure that out is to do the things that don't work first.
Yes. And what works for your first child may not work for your second child. They're all their own individual people.
Yep. Figured that one out real quick. Oh, they look alike, but they do not act alike whatsoever.
So I have another question here. Christina
Mhm.
was mentioning donated breast milk, and so we have a couple questions about that topic. Question is, I luckily have a ton of extra breast milk, and I was considering donating it to a mom in need, but I have no idea where to start or if anybody would even want my milk.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I know quite a few people who have donated and or received donated milk, and it's just such an amazing thing that I have seen in my years as a lactation consultant. So if you are breast or chest feeding and pumping a lot of extra milk and you want to donate it, oh my goodness, please do. I think one of the easiest ways right now to figure out someone who needs it is in your mom's Facebook groups, any of the community Facebook groups. Or there's also an Eats on Feets and a Human Milk for Human Babies that will go, different areas. So you could go to our area, the Maryland Human Milk for Human Babies, and kind of figure out who is nearby.
Cool.
Yeah, we've done a ton of facilitating between donors and recipients, like within our group and just like within our local communities. And I think that there are definitely people who want it. So anybody
Yes.
in a position of saying like, I don't know if anybody would want this, or, definitely somebody somewhere wants it. And we
Absolutely.
have the infrastructure set up to kind of facilitate those connections.
That's amazing. It's so funny because, I'm a lactation consultant. People are always messaging me about things like this, but I've had quite a few instances over the past couple of years that I've had someone say to me, I have all of this extra milk. Do you know anyone who needs it? And within a day or two, another person messaging me saying, I'm really struggling with my milk supply. If you happen to know anyone that has extra milk, and every time it's like within days of each other, I'm pairing these people together. And then everyone just feels so good about it. Parents helping other parents and parents helping other babies. It's truly an amazing thing.
Yeah. I honestly wish that I knew that was even a thing a couple of years ago. I stopped breastfeeding or even pumping with my second child. When he was 3 months or 3 weeks old, it didn't work out for mostly me. It took a toll on my mental health, but then also him and the latch and yada, yada, yada. And I kind of knew of donated milk, but I had this own stigma in my head about if I don't know, if it was kind of I'm not good enough to give my own kid my own milk. So why am I gonna give somebody else's milk? But in retrospect, I should have just been I don't just get my kid fed this gigantic 10-pound baby, get him fed.
My gosh. I do think it's one of those things that still has a little bit of a stigma. And it's funny because, we donate blood, we donate plasma, we donate sperm. If you think of all of the things that get donated that you don't really bat an eye about it being medically necessary. And since the beginning of time, people have nursed other people's babies. That's just what happened before there were pumps and everything else. So it's definitely a viable option.
I think that's an interesting concept though, because Christina, you're definitely right. Why do we regard human milk differently from blood? I think it's a medical necessity thing. I think that a lot of people don't consider milk for babies a medical necessity in the same way they might consider blood, if you need a blood transfusion, a medical necessity. I don't really know why. That's probably a different question for a different day. But when you kind of put it in this different context, yes, when your baby needs to eat and you have limited options, now it is a medical necessity.
Absolutely.
But I think, like Erica's saying, there's still this, it's bigger sometimes than just like the medical physical aspects of it. There's a big mental and emotional aspect to utilizing somebody else's milk too. And that can be a challenging thing to kind of reconcile with. And so I don't really know what to say about it besides, if you feel that way, you're not alone. We've had some conversations in the last week with moms who were kind of in that same boat, who have been offered some breast milk from others and don't really know how they feel about it.
Yeah.
And so I would say, if you're in that position, that's valid too, and give yourself some space to kind of to sit with it. It also doesn't make you a bad person if you're not comfortable with it. But it maybe is another place to explore within yourself with some curiosity of why am I feeling that way? And, for your own mental health perspective, like, would exploring those beliefs help?
Yeah. I think especially as mothers, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves for a lot of things that are out of our control. If I couldn't have a vaginal delivery, I had to have a C-section, I couldn't breastfeed, I had to, all of these things that a lot of them are out of our control. But we're putting that on ourselves. We're putting that pressure and that guilt and that shame on ourselves and feeling less than. Look at my friend that could do this. Look at this stranger on Instagram that can do this. And just knowing that the people that are offering their milk are doing it with just the best of intentions to help. They just want to help babies.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of like, I don't know, I guess kind of nicely like transitions into this next question too, of just being like, so it says, my partner and I are pretty set on feeding our baby breast milk, but I'm not producing as much as I would like to. So any tips to increase my supply? And is donated breast milk an actual option? So that actually kind of worked out nicely.
So congratulations on your baby. Very exciting. I find that so many parents are using the wrong flange size when they are pumping. So
what does flange mean?
The flange, let me get my little.
What is this flange you speak of?
This is this flange I speak of. So this is the flange, okay, the pumping flange that the bottle goes down here and we pump our milk into the bottle. And so the flange is, in most pumps, they give you a size 24 and 27, and that's millimeters. And would you like to know where that originated from, these sizings? I know you want to know.
I do.
All ears.
So I recently took a class with a wonderful IBCLC, Jeanette, Babies in Common. She's up in Boston. And it was such a mind-boggling, the whole thing. So in the 1800s, a man went to a glass blower and asked him to make a pump for his wife to remove milk. And the glass blower looked at the device that was used to remove milk from dairy cows and fashioned the pump, the glass pump, from this. And so if you think about the size of a cow udder, and you think about the size of most human nipples are a lot smaller than cow udders. But yet, all of these pumps come with a 24 and an even bigger size, a 27. And so if you're pumping with the wrong flange size, your body is not going to make the milk that you need because you have too much areola pulling into the pump. And it's not stimulating your body in the right way. So I can tell you that this year, every single consult that I've gone to, in-home consult or virtual consult, when I have said, what flange size are you using? And let's measure. I had a mom who was told to use a 30 and she needed a 15.
Wow.
So of course you're not making enough milk. If your body, think about if you were walking around with like way too big or way too small shoes and I told you to go run a half of a mile. I mean, you wouldn't make it very far.
Oh my gosh.
So that is, if you're having trouble pumping enough milk, number one thing. number one thing. So if you go to Jeanette's Instagram, Babies in Common, she has a nice little visual about finding the right flange fit, and she's amazing. She also does virtual flange fittings.
Cool.
But that is my big thing now with any parent that I'm working with. Even if not at that moment they're thinking about pumping, I'm like, let's see if you have the right flange size, because things are not going to go well if you have the wrong flange size. So that's number one, flange fitting. And then number two is, I would say you should probably have a consult with an IBCLC, because are you not making enough milk, or do you think you're not making enough milk because you're seeing people with freezers full on Instagram and you think that's what you should be making, right? Because our babies, when they're 2 weeks old, their bellies can only hold so much. So if you're pumping a few ounces of milk, but you're seeing someone on Instagram is pumping 9 ounces of milk, certainly you think that you're not making enough. So is it that you don't have a large milk supply, or is it that you think that you don't have enough milk supply? The other thing that can happen at a visit with an IBCLC is we can do a weighted feed. So we're going to weigh the baby, then you're going to feed the baby, and then we're going to weigh the baby again to see, is your baby transferring milk? Because I've had parents who don't pump a lot, maybe you pump a couple ounces, but their baby is, big and gaining weight just fine. But you're looking at your pump output thinking, oh, I'm not making enough. But baby is telling us otherwise.
Interesting. Okay, so how would you know, I guess, I don't really know specifics about this question, but how would you know if your baby wasn't getting enough milk?
So basically, if you are checking your baby's diaper output, making sure that they're peeing and pooping enough, and your young baby, 2 months old, is feeding 8 or more times in 24 hours, and they seem pretty content after a feed, then you're probably making enough milk. If your baby is crying a lot, fussing a lot, they're not gaining weight very well, they're not having adequate wet and dirty diapers, it could be that you're having a milk supply issue. Could be that you have something going on in your own health that's causing this, PCOS, a large blood loss in delivery, some hormonal issues. Or it could be that maybe the baby has something going on that they're having trouble transferring, and you would be making enough milk, but the baby's just having trouble transferring. So it's kind of a lot of detective work being an IBCLC, figuring out exactly what's going on with each individual dyad.
That's awesome. So, I think sometimes parents don't want to seem like that crazy Google, I went down this rabbit hole and I've diagnosed my kid with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So they potentially hold off on, calling their pediatrician, or, they don't want to seem like this hysterical, crazy mom. But when would be an appropriate amount of time to be like, hey, I've done all of these things. Can I get some extra help?
In my perfect lactation world, everyone would have a prenatal consult where we could talk about any worries or concerns from a previous baby, or any medical concerns that you might think could be a problem. And then you would already have that lactation consultant, and you could text them in the hospital to say, I had my baby, things are going well, or I had my baby, I'm needing some help. And you would have that home visit right away when you came home. Again, in a perfect world.
Okay.
Yeah. I have clients who do that, who, reach out when they're pregnant, and it's great because you already established that relationship. You already kind of know concerns that they had about previous babies or medical issues, to kind of counsel them throughout the end of their pregnancy, kind of how to move forward with things. But definitely, if you think that if you were concerned about something with your baby, your parental instinct is usually right. So reach out, find a lactation consultant in your area, I find a lot of families that I'm working with that are finding me when their baby's 3 months old or 4 months old. They've brought up these issues multiple times with the pediatrician and have kind of been blown off about things. Oh, babies are fussy. Oh, babies cry. And the parent really knows deep down, but I feel like something's wrong.
Mhm.
So if you, as the parent of your baby, think that something's going on, reach out for sure.
And I would agree with Christina and say anytime that you feel like you're kind of getting to the end of your line of what you know what to do, that's the time to call in more help. Because from, where I sit as a perinatal professional, a client can come to me and say, like, I've done everything I know how to do. This isn't working out for me. But I can say, well, I see this whole trajectory of all these other things that we could explore, that we could try. Like, from my perspective, there's a lot of other things here left to explore before we say this is not going to work for you. And so when you get to the place where, whatever you've got, that's all you've got, there's people there who've got a lot more. So I would definitely agree. Like, don't ever feel weird about asking for help, because it's not an admission of failure or an admission of crazy. It's kind of like a recognition of the limitations of your own knowledge, and that you're not a professional in everything. I mean, none of us can be. But your intuition is there for a reason. And your intuition as a parent is a very valuable tool. And I think that's the most kind of like your greatest strength as a parent, is that you're the expert on your baby. And so you take your expert knowledge of your baby and you go to an expert in breastfeeding, and then together with those two experts, then you figure out, the best thing to do.
Definitely.
Yeah. Where were you guys like 3 years ago?
Having my own babies.
Oh man.
Also, to add about making enough milk, do I have enough milk? Do I not? So many people think that there's some kind of magic pill or magic drink or, magic food, and really just eating foods that you like, eating foods that are nutrient dense, staying hydrated. That's going to make you make milk. There's no magic drink. There's no magic pill. If someone is selling you that, they've found a way to capitalize on parents worried about milk supply.
So even those like lactation cookies that you can buy at the store, I like ate my body weight in those.
So oatmeal is a great food, right? It's a great food to eat. It keeps you full. You put some flaxseed, maybe some brewer's yeast. A little bit of brewer's yeast can increase a little bit of oatmeal can. When I usually see people eating things or drinking things and it impacting their supply, it's by maybe an ounce or two. And it's people that are back at work and pumping, and maybe they've kind of let their water intake go down for the day because they're back at work and they're busy, and they notice, oh, my supply went down. And then, okay, well, are you remembering to stay hydrated? And then they drink some coconut water, and then, oh, I'm making more milk. And it's really just, are you eating? Are you hydrated? Are you taking care of yourself? And that's when you're gonna
our basic needs.
Yeah.
That sometimes we forget to provide to ourselves as parents because we're so busy providing it to our kids. But so we medically do need our own water and food and sleep.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Noted.
I wanted to go back to some questions about the donated breast milk, which was the other half of that parent's question.
Sure.
If you're considering accepting donated breast milk, how do you know if it's safe? Should you ask the donor some questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, like I said, everyone that I know who has reached out to me to say, I have extra milk, I want to, donate, keep in mind, they're feeding this milk to their own baby. So the idea that they would do something or tamper with it or be taking a drug that was unsafe, to me is very unlikely, because they're giving that medication to their own, or that milk to their own baby. Certainly, if you wanted to ask them, what do you follow any special diets? Do you avoid any certain food? Do you drink alcohol? How much alcohol do you drink? What medications do you take? Have those, been verified for safety? Did you want to ask them for blood work? I mean, I guess these would all be, appropriate questions if you were taking milk from someone that, that you didn't know, or a friend of a friend or something. And certainly if your baby has special allergy needs, intolerances, then accepting milk from someone who's just on a, eating anything they want, that wouldn't work very well.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So I mean, there you go.
I was thinking also, it's a little bit off topic, but in general, matches our whole conversation here. If you're a person that normally feeds formula, but now is considering using breast milk, like donated breast milk, is there anything that you need to know about the differences between feeding breast milk and formula?
Sure. So one of the bigger differences with babies that are taking human milk versus babies that are taking formula is the amount of stooling that these babies do a day. So formula can constipate babies. They can go to the bathroom less frequently, whereas babies that have human milk go pretty frequently. So if you are changing from, formula and introducing some breast milk, you may notice your baby starts to have seedy yellow stools, and you almost might think, oh my gosh, do they have diarrhea? And it's just the difference in the way their body absorbs and is excreting, and they just stool a lot more frequently. And then on the other end, if your baby is primarily fed breast milk and then you start formula, your baby might get constipated. So I would say that's kind of one of the bigger differences. And then obviously, like I just said, if your baby is on a specialty formula, a soy formula, they can't have, milk protein, you would need to find a milk donor who was free of those foods, which may prove to be a little bit trickier. The other difference with human milk and formula is formula that you get on the store shelf. I'm not talking about specialty preemie formula in the NICU, just like regular old, formula, is 20 calories an ounce. So for a baby to grow with formula at always 20 calories an ounce, we need to increase their bottle ounces. So you may have a 6-month-old baby taking a 7 or 8 ounce bottle because we need to increase the ounces for them to grow. Whereas human milk changes fat, calorie, protein, everything in that milk changes to help baby grow. So most babies that are taking human milk will kind of max out at a 3 to 4 ounce bottle for a feed, even at 6 months old, even at 9 months old. And again, I'm saying most babies, not every baby. And so that is one of the bigger differences in volume. Is human milk is anywhere between 20 and 32 calories an ounce in the studies that they've done.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
And then as they grow, it changes. So the time of the day, it's different. So if you find that you're giving formula, your baby's bottles are 8 ounces, but then when they're taking human milk bottles, it may be less volume that they're taking.
So that leads me to this next question, thinking, how important is it that if you're accepting donor breast milk, that the baby whose parent, like the parent's baby, is the same age as your baby? Because say that you have a 2-month-old baby and you're accepting donated milk from somebody with a 12-month-old baby, is that okay?
That's a really good question too. Especially in this current situation, I would absolutely take it no matter the age difference. But I have had families in the past who maybe they had, a 1-month-old and they were given the option of, do you want this milk? The baby's 12 months old. And they were, a little bit pickier, looking for someone with milk that had a baby a little bit closer in age. It's not that anything bad's going to happen, not, that there's going to be anything wrong with the milk, but just considering that, I don't know, it's coming from a different age group. Now in the NICU, we have donor milk and we have no idea who it's from, where it's from, what it's processed in a facility like a blood bank where they screen it. Everyone has to send in their, blood work. And then the NICUs buy the donor milk from the milk bank. So when you get that milk, you have no idea. And some of these preemies that they're getting donor milk are, 26 weeks gestation. So truly in the scheme of things, it's not a big enough difference for it to be a problem.
That's so interesting though. Like, I mean, the science and like just the way that like your body works. And then, yeah, that's just
Wild.
so, yeah, it's really wild.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, and I know kind of just thinking more about, kind of putting it in like what is impacting like our families now with like the formula shortage. I mean, are there any tips to like extend formula? Because I mean, I've seen people talking about putting like cereal or rice or like diluting it with water or like mixing breast milk and formula, like all of the above. Do you have any kind of advice or?
So please do not dilute your formula with more water. I have seen babies come in very, very sick with very bad electrolyte imbalances from getting formula that was too diluted. So please make sure you're following the recommendations. Their babies are just so sensitive in they need that special electrolyte balance that the formula is telling you to make. So please don't do that. I know a lot of people are calling the pediatrician to say, do you have formula samples? But I think a lot of people haven't thought about, have you called your OB office? Because OB offices get a lot of samples. And if you think about it, they may give it to you, a sample pack when you're pregnant, and then maybe at your 4-week or 6-week postpartum checkup, but then they don't see you again until a year later.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have a friend that works in an OB office. She's a nurse practitioner, and I have been reaching out to her because she realized her office storeroom had some. And so I've been kind of making the connections with families that I know of, hey, what kind do you have? Can I tell them to come, stop by the office? So for sure, call the OB office that where you deliver. That would be a good connection to try to make.
Nice. Well, Sarah was telling me about something called paste bottle feeding.
Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit? Because I don't even know what I'm talking about.
So paste bottle feeding is actually a great way to try to make your formula last a little bit longer, or your breast milk, because the baby's not going to drink it as fast and they're going to realize that they're full. Okay. So the analogy that I always use with families is, think about when you're running late and you have to eat and you're like shoveling your food and you run out the door, and then you're sitting there and you're like, oh, my stomach doesn't feel good. I ate that way too fast, right? We've all had that where we ate way too fast. That's what happens when babies are taking large volumes really quickly. So if we're holding baby kind of like this and holding the bottle like this, they're just chugging that bottle down. Whereas if we're holding baby upright and we're holding the bottle at this angle and we're giving them breaks, just like you or I would drink our water. I'm not going to sit here and chug this whole thing. I'm going to take a sip, put it down, take a sip, put it down. So if you're mimicking a slower feed for babies, they're probably going to take a little bit less than they would if they were gulping it down.
And I mean, is that for like, can you start that like at any time of baby? Like, could we do that with like newborns? Or
I show people this in the hospital. Yes. Because in the hospital, their tummies are so tiny. So especially in the hospital, and it's baby's natural reflex to suck. So if you give them the bottle to suck on, chances are they're going to suck down the whole thing, no matter how much volume is in there. So if we're pacing them to give them a little bit smaller volume, they're going to realize they're full. And then they're not going to need maybe 6 ounces as their usual bottle. Maybe they'll only take 4 ounces. So that is a good way to think about saving some formula or some breast milk.
Could you give some guidance on like how long a bottle feed should take and how to know when a baby's full? If that's something that parents haven't like
Ooh.
done before, they might not know how to tell.
Yeah, for sure. So what I would say is babies should be rooting around. We want to know that they're hungry. We don't just want to look at a clock and say, oh, I think it's time for their next feed. We want to see them rooting, see them putting hands to mouth, licking. And so you would introduce the bottle and let them start sucking on it. And then after a couple sucks and swallows, you would want to either tilt the baby down a little bit or break the seal on the bottle and kind of give them a little break. And you'll notice they stop sucking and they kind of like take some breaths and they're like looking around a little bit. And when they start sucking again, then you can tilt the bottle back up and let them take a little bit more. And so it's this kind of nice, slow feed. About an ounce would be like a 5 to 7 minutes in an ounce would be an ounce. So if your baby is taking, 4 ounces, at least 20 minutes for the bottle, which I know if you give a lot of babies a big bottle and you hold them like this, they're going to suck it down a lot quicker than that. So if you're letting them realize they're full, and then a lot of times what you'll notice is when they are full, they'll turn their head away, or maybe they put their hand up and kind of swat the bottle away. You can try to burp them. If they seem calm, relaxed, then they're probably full. And if you notice that your baby spits up a lot after their feed, it could be that they're taking it quickly and they're taking a lot, and
Yeah,
maybe they don't need that much.
that would make a ton of sense for my son, because that's like also something that he was dealing with a lot when he was a baby. It was just like, I thought he had like acid reflux or GERD or whatever. I'm like, and so that, yeah.
Yeah,
it
I
is
talk
so
about pace
helpful.
bottle feeding all the time in the hospital. And, even if it's not relevant in that moment because the parent is only breast or chest feeding, it's going to be relevant at some point. I mean, everyone has to give their baby a bottle at some point, pretty much. Parents are going back to work. And so it's really important information to have.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, we have another question here, kind of from the perspective of a caring support system. My friend is really struggling being able to feed her baby, and I don't know what I can do or what I should do to help her. Please help me help her. And
Mhm.
I've been seeing a lot of comments like this from like people who aren't directly affected, but who are really feeling it in their heart and are really desperate to help, and also feel powerless, as in like what is it that we can do?
So I think most importantly, not to make unhelpful comments like, have you thought about breastfeeding? I mean, I think we've all seen those posts going around on the internet. It's not helpful. So really asking them, what can I do to help you? Would it be helpful if every time I was at the store, I was texting with you to say, hey, do you need this? Or do you want me to look for you? Because I'm sure if I had a baby that I needed to formula feed, and I had a couple different friends that were reaching out at various points saying, hey, I'm running to Target today, or hey, I'm going to be at Sam's Club. Can I look for you? That would take a huge relief, off of my shoulders, because
Mhm.
certainly having a baby and going grocery shopping is a whole feat unto itself.
Yeah.
And then not even being able to say, well, I'm going to go to Target and pick up this formula. I mean, who knows if I'm going to pick it up and how many stores I'm going to
Yeah.
need to go to. And then I'm dragging my baby around all day. So I think one of the biggest things people can do right now that don't have babies, that don't have young children, that want to help their friends or family, is to just be on the lookout for formula in the stores, and just be in communication with those friends or family that are bottle feeding their babies.
Mhm.
I think that's really excellent advice to ask what would be helpful.
Mhm.
Um, because I understand this like feeling of really wanting to help. But you kind of have to like step out of your own self and say like helping is about making that person's life easier, not about making myself feel good that I'm helping. And that can help
Yes.
you, that can kind of be like some guideposts, like what should I do and maybe what should I not do? Like what actually would be appreciated by this person and what really would be helpful to this person. And sometimes people don't know. And then you have to kind of use your best empathy stepping into their shoes to figure it out. But like you said, if you had multiple friends texting you, just saying, hey, I'm going, can I look out? Whether or not you as the friend actually find the formula and provide it, as the person who is struggling to find it, just knowing that people are there and like looking out for
Hmm.
you and checking in with you, I think can do a lot more than we actually realize. That's something that
Yeah.
I find when I work with new parents, that I often find that I don't feel like I'm doing very much. But then when, I come back with them later, I made a huge difference to them. Doing something that for me felt like nothing, but for them was huge at the time. So I think also, as the support system, not underestimating what just being there as someone's friend can do for their situation.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And listening, maybe they just need to like cry about it for 5 minutes and say, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that this is happening and this sucks so bad. And maybe they don't need a solution from you. They just need you to
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah. And I think we've been seeing that too a lot, just kind of as a trend of like we have our in-person meetings for After Baby Club. And, sometimes like we kind of want to jump to like, oh, well, have you tried X, Y, and Z? But then there's a lot of times that like the mom's just like, can I just get this out? Like,
Mhm.
I don't even need solutions at this point. Like, I just have so much inside of me that like, I just need to put it somewhere and like, is it okay if it's here? And it's like,
Mhm.
of course. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's really just providing that like safe space. And, if it is with us at After Baby Club, is if it is, like just with other support systems, if it is, just kind of like you and your family and friends, I think it's just so incredibly important of having like a community, an actual like people that you can count on and know that they have your back and that they're there for you, I think is like extremely important for mental health.
That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Christina, can you speak a little bit about what a consult with an IBCLC would look like if parents are thinking, okay, I might want to try this? I know that some parents like don't really understand what it's about. It can be expensive. There's a lot of confusion about whether it might be covered by insurance. And with all of these unknown kind of things at a highly stressful time, those can be barriers to people reaching out. So could you just, I guess, a couple words to kind of give these people some more information, maybe help them feel more at ease with the process of like what maybe
Sure.
that looks like to connect with you.
So through the Affordable Care Act, lactation coverage is supposed to be 100% covered as a preventative care. So just like going to the pediatrician for the well baby checkup, you going to your primary care doctor for your well check, it's supposed to be 100% covered. But we all know what insurance companies say and what they do is can be varying. So through the lactation network, if you went online, the lactation network actually 100% covers visits if you have Care First, if you have Anthem, or if you have Cigna. And so I work with the lactation network. So if you went to my website and you clicked check my coverage and you were approved with them, you would have 6 visits with me 100% covered.
Oh,
That is
wow.
Um,
amazing. Wow.
Yeah, that's seriously
100%.
incredible.
And so even if the way the lactation network works is even if the insurance company for some reason denied the claim or didn't want to pay out the full amount, the lactation network is not billing the client for any of it.
Wow.
So you would then be set up with me, or if you were not in the area and you were set up with another lactation consultant, and you would work with them to schedule your visits, to work on whatever you wanted to work on. And so maybe it is a bottle feeding consult. Maybe that's what you need help with. We do that as IBCLCs. Maybe it is latch help or relactation. We do that too. So if we were working on feeding baby at the breast or chest, we would bring a scale, we would do a weighted feed, talk about any concerns. We take a thorough medical history for mom and baby, or birthing parent and baby, and really just make sure that we're putting all the puzzle pieces together. Like I said, it's kind of like detective work for each parent, and each baby is a whole different story. And making sure that then we're communicating this to the OB, to the midwife, to the pediatrician, what other providers do we need to get involved with? I went to a consult the other day and the mom just had this glaring mastitis. And I said, okay, have we been in touch with someone to get you an antibiotic? Because this is clearly needed. And luckily she had been in touch with her midwife just right before I got there. But that would have been something that I would have kind of gotten on top of had she not reached out. So making sure that you have the right lactation help is so important. If you do not have one of those insurance companies, sometimes there are lactation consultants that do take other insurance in network. So you could go to USLCA, United States Lactation Consultant Association.org, and you could type in your zip code and you could figure out, do I have a lactation consultant near me? Let me click my website. Let me see if they accept insurance or what insurance they accept. And so that would be another good way. Certainly, I do think on Facebook, a lot of parents talk about, oh, I use this person and I love them, or I use that person, I wouldn't recommend them. So then also asking family and friends, have they used someone, in the area, and who they would recommend.
And so just so we can, so all of our friends can find you, can you tell us your website and your Instagram again?
Yes, so it's Mama Moon Lactation for Instagram and my website, pretty easy. And like I said, they can book right from my website. They can check their insurance coverage right from there. It's pretty easy. And then if someone is not local, they can do a virtual visit. That goes a little bit differently. I'll have people send some videos and photos ahead of time just so that I can make sure maybe your spouse or your partner isn't going to be there to be able to hold the camera kind of at the right angle. And so to kind of take off any of that pressure, I'll just send you some information about, can we get a video of this or a photo of this ahead of time so that you can have someone helping you to get kind of the exact angle that would be necessary for a virtual visit. And then we'll just go over everything like we would at an in-person visit. The only difference is there's not a weighted feed to see what baby's transferring.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's such
awesome.
a fantastic resource that I think is becoming more commonplace, but is still not something that a majority of people are utilizing. And I hope that, people hearing you talk about what it is that you do will help some people realize that this really amazing resource is here in our community and become something that more people get access to just through awareness.
Absolutely.
It's really wonderful.
And that you don't have to do it alone.
You don't. And I think so much of that consult, the first one especially, is me also asking, how was your delivery? How did that go? How are you feeling? Because sometimes if you had a traumatic delivery, you need to talk about that. And you need to talk about it with someone who's not going to have any judgment, who's just going to listen, who's going to say, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And who's going to be able to recommend, have you thought about talking to someone? Have you thought about a postpartum counselor? Or maybe have you reached out to your OB or midwife about talking about this and getting screened for postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety? Because these are all things that are popping up, especially if you had a difficult delivery. If you're having trouble with breastfeeding on top of that, I mean, that can really just compound things so much. And sometimes it takes another person coming in and saying, I think talking to someone would be a really good idea for a parent to say, I think you're right. I think I do need to talk to someone a little bit more. Because I'm certainly happy to listen, but I am not a professional counselor. And that is such an important role in the postpartum period. So I want to make sure all of my clients have access to that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that is really close to Erica and I's heart. So I'll put a plug in here for our group for Lower Susquehanna After Baby Club. We meet every Wednesday at 10 at We Rock the Spectrum in Forest Hill to be a place for people to talk. And I have found for myself as a parent, it's valuable even for me not being in the immediate postpartum time, but just having other moms to talk to hold space and to validate some of these big feelings. Parenting is really intense and it can be really isolating, but we're not doing it alone. And there are other people who are also on this journey who can empathize and understand and hold compassion and help you find compassion for yourself. So there are really a lot of really excellent resources in our local community. And we are really well situated to connect people with those resources. So I would say anybody that's listening, that's feeling like they're looking for their village and they don't know where to start with us. We can be a first step, and we can help connect you to the other places, the other people, and the other resources that are out there.
Yeah. I know. I'm like, also, I mean, both professionally and personally, like, I'm just really thankful for, the whole Facebook group, our After Baby Club, and just kind of where this is going. Just kind of the future of it, just because, yeah, like what Sarah was saying, it's just, I think parenthood can be super isolating. And also, if you have maybe in your head, this idea of a support system that you feel like you should have, or everyone else has it, why don't I? Honestly, like, you kind of have to make your own at this point. Like, I think that's what Sarah and I did. We kind of are like creating this community that, like, you choose and chooses you back.
Yeah.
So, like, it is kind of like a little bit cheesy, but it's also really true, because it's like hard to do this alone, so yeah, hopefully everybody who's listening or sharing, just kind of knows that, like, you definitely don't have to do it alone, and you have a plethora of resources. We just got to have to figure out where they are and how to find them, and really taking that next step to feel comfortable enough to, reach out. So
yeah,
we are here.
We're here, and we love having new friends.
We do. I love friends. Oh, well, thank you, Christina, for joining us.
Thank you so much for getting this important information out there, guys.
Yeah, this was really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to put links for everything that Christina mentioned with the blog post, so that you don't have to go hunting around for it. And any questions or other, needs for resources, we're here. Reach out to us.
All right, guys. Thanks
you
for listening. Have a great day.
Yeah.
All of the love and support and virtual hugs.
Yes, absolutely.